information. They wanted more content. Well, with me today are 3 media executives, and they're going to share with us how they experienced the crisis and how they're responding to it. And I just want to remind everyone, make sure if you do have questions, just raise your hand. Remember, click that icon. We want to hear from you at the end. Well, let me introduce everyone. I have Craig Kostelic. He is the Chief Business Officer, U.S. Advertising Revenue and Head of Global Advertising Solutions at Condé Nast. I also have Joy Robbins. She is the Chief Revenue Officer at the Washington Post. And Jessica Sibley. She is the Chief Revenue Officer at Forbes. Welcome, guys.
How are you?
Thank you so much for joining us.
Sure. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well, glad to have you. I really appreciate you being with us virtually. So, and as I said initially, I really want to hear your experiences, especially that first initial impact. How did you experience that, and how did you respond? Jessica, let's start with you.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Joy. Hi, Craig. Lisa, great to see you. Glad to see that everyone's doing well and staying safe. And it's great to be here at the Publishing Insider Summit. I would say, Forbes is a champion of really a people first brand and a people first culture. So, the focus was initially on all employees, their health, their safety, their well-being. Obviously, we quickly pivoted to a remote work from home newsroom as well as business side. The second was focusing on our clients and taking a consultative approach to working with them and navigating through this. Certainly, like Catherine spoke from Meredith, we experienced a lot of pauses and changes, rethink, remarketing, and really being flexible and working through all of that side by side with them. I would say then for us, it's been a lot of acceleration of new products and pivots. Very much like we're on a virtual event today. We've got over 25 virtual events happening, sponsored, one happening today with Google. So it's been a lot of change, a lot of quick movements and pivots, and just really staying on the front lines of navigating through all of this with our clients. I would say on the editorial side,
Just actually, before you get into what you've been doing, I really want to hear again from Craig and Joy that initial impact as well, because obviously all of you are moving forward, and as you mentioned, Catherine saying even being able to quickly adapt. So Craig, can you sort of give us those first few days and your ability to adapt and sort of how you move forward, at least initially?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, a lot of what Jessica said, I think is absolutely true on the people front. And I think you're trying to make sure that everyone, again, from a safety standpoint, just from like a technology and tool standpoint, is able to is in a good place personally and professionally to be able to do everything that they need to do. So I think that's first and foremost. And then I think, the first couple of days really looked like huddling a lot internally because I think there's this initial instinct that you want to try to create like blanket rules of like how you handle pausing, how you handle cancellations, how you handle branded content programs, and are you moving forward? Are you not moving forward? How do you engage talent on that? Like, do they feel safe? Like, there's so many different elements of each individual thing. So I think one of the first important things that we did was that, our job is to be great listeners and good and be consultative. But there is no blanket approach to this current reality that we're in. And so it's really, just working with, each of my category leaders, each of my agency leadership team, and really understanding kind of, on a case-by-case basis based off what category the advertiser's in, how their business model has been impacted by the pandemic, how you are going to move forward and operate with them, right? Because the standards of how you're going to work through this with a CPG company is going to be different than how you're working through it with an auto company or a travel company. So I think this idea of like one blanket approach was pretty much impossible, even though you go there initially. So it was really kind of breaking down everything with the individual category leaders and the agency leaders and trying to develop a case-by-case based treatment for each of our situations.
Right. And Joy, I know you talked about how you were actually able to sort of react pretty quickly because of your partnerships. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. I mean, I think what the foundation that we've laid over the last 15 months since I joined was really thinking about being not just consultative to our brands, but their partners. which really meant that our first priority, obviously, to what Jessica and Craig talked about in terms of making sure we as a team were okay, and that our first priority was our internal people. So we looked at our brands the same way. And I think it really led us to taking the posture of spirit of generosity when it came to first asking them how they were doing and then finding out what they needed. I think looking at the lens of a practical need was people didn't know what to say. All of those pauses and cancellations, so many were the result of just not knowing what to say. The ground had shifted underneath their feet in the matter of days, and helping them understand how to navigate using their voice to reach our readers, reach their consumers was our first priority. So we worked very proactively and very quickly, actually, to get a survey among our reader panel that we are able to tap into, about 10,000 individuals, to understand, from our brand partners who want to continue to both support journalism, but see your message. What did they want to hear from? What was top of mind for them? What was sentiment? And understanding sentiment was at the heart of so much of what put the brakes on in the first place, and being able to really quickly come back and, essentially live up to that partner status of, we're not telling you to buy anything. We're not trying to sell you advertising right now. We're trying to help you know what to do next. And I think that was the thing that was most well received on, you had a candid conversation with a marketer in starting, of March 11th going through the middle of April. It was, we don't know if what we're doing is right. And we don't want to be the ones to say, this is absolutely how you do it. Like we want to learn from what's working and from what others are doing. So really helping put that intelligence out to our clients was like our first priority behind actually just checking in on them to make sure that, they were safe.
Right. And Jessica, I know you sort of you were looking at what people were looking for, excuse me. And there was sort of a scenario in terms of, first they were looking for maybe content about the crisis, and move that forward with me. How did you, evolve as you saw what people were looking for, what they were craving?
Yeah, no, that's great, and a great point. I mean, we quickly moved in the early days. I think Craig spoke to this, to doubling our breaking newsroom, to launching, 7 newsletters just within a week, launching Forbes forums to convene certain target audiences, original video, and all kinds of extra coverage, obviously around the pandemic, but around science, health, what's going on in the markets. And the record content that we produced on Forbes.com than ever before in our history really drove also a highly engaged and record audience. So we were able to really measure that in real time, day by day, to understand what our users, our readers were looking at, what they were consuming, and how that changed over days and weeks, and share that information and share that data based on segments, based on target audiences, based on ages, demographics, even geography, with all of our marketing partners. And so as we moved through the pandemic and the crisis, we saw a lot of changes in sort of reader consumption, from getting the general information on what was happening in real time for news, then really understanding stimulus, recovery, reopening, and now what we call a lot of rebuilding.
Right. And Craig, I know you have so many different divisions, and as you said, depending each one, there's no blanket answer for them. But was there some, common factor? Was there something that, what was impacted the most? What did you really need to deal with in order to start moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like, so you separate out kind of like the categories and the business models who like just actually couldn't operate, or were at such reduced levels of operation that they're trying to save budget, right? So it's like, if you think about like airlines, travel, think about auto, again, luxury providers whose 90% of their sales are happening at retail, and like their stores have to close down. It's like they're just trying to recoup their budgets, right? Because it's like their business models have been so fundamentally impacted, right? So you kind of carve that out and just, talk to them, handle that, keep up, but it's a very different conversation. I think for everyone else who, had to figure out what this new normal looked like, it kind of, in some ways, I think it started with creative. And when you look at like the creative that they were running, a lot of brands wanted to pause that, still wanted to invest in advertising because their creative showed people together. They could have been at bars or restaurants or with their friends arm by arm. And it's like, well, we're all, we all just kind of like had an abrupt end to that way of life suddenly. And so we had to, and they didn't want to be out in the marketplace, like reminding people that like they were in quarantine, right? And so we started working with companies on like, okay, what is your creative messaging in the marketplace? You know, for us as a company with so many different brands, especially focused on unscripted, you know, premium content, we kept on producing through the pandemic in really interesting and creative ways. And so we were spending a lot of time at the beginning talking about how our creatives are handling production, you know, creative ideation and production in a post-pandemic environment, and how we can kind of like help them to you know, evolve their messaging to be more culturally relevant or not tone deaf during this time. And I think, you know, it's interesting. We kind of then got into like a second phase of it in which, you know, every commercial that was re-engineered to be reflective of our current state all look the same. You couldn't actually like, it was just like, you know, we're here for you messaging 30 seconds and then slap a brand logo. And so then we were also working with brands to say like, okay, not your brand is going to mean different things to different people based off what we're all going through. So not everyone has to have kind of like the feel good kind of like, you know, soft messaging. It's like you can handle it and approach it in a very different way. So in some ways I would say the creative conversations, even if they were tied to media or detached from media, was probably the most, where we spent the most time, you know, having conversations with our clients.
Right. And then, as you say, not being tone deaf, because you guys obviously are going through this, you know, challenging time with the crisis, and we're starting to sort of maybe see the light and move beyond this. And then, of course, we're then again hit with another wave of activity with the death of George Floyd. I mean, must be devastating for you to sort of, as you're starting to maybe move up, you have to kind of take a step back again, and again, not come across tone deaf and not maybe move forward as optimistically. How did you respond to this sort of this, you know, double wave of things and really be able to move forward? And it's been recently, so obviously that's new, but just Jessica, talk about a little bit of what you were doing.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a deeply painful time for all of us, and especially for our Black colleagues. And we've been, you know, super sensitive to that. And we've been having a lot of conversations and taking a lot of action items, you know, within our company. I would say it's a similar situation with working with our brand partners in those pauses and taking the time to make sure that the messaging is right and relevant and in the right places. I would say, you know, Forbes, we look at ourselves as a brand of action and a driver of change. And we've been on this journey for over 100 years. And, you know, we like to say that we're a purpose-driven brand, and we have a lot of various, you know, platforms that can drive systemic change in business, in society, in culture, and that we can kind of convene the people that are behind change and making change. And, you know, I think that was exemplified with Randall Lane, our Chief Content Officer's Greater Capitalism. We're talking a lot about not shareholder capitalism, but stakeholder, and really leading in those conversations. So we've been working with marketers. I would say one great example is the 30 under 30 community that we've built over the last 10 years. We formed a coalition around accelerating change, and we brought in our under 30 listers and our under 30 community. We actually partnered with Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans, as well as the city of Detroit. And we're doing a series of hackathons where we're bringing together really the best and the brightest entrepreneurs and problem solvers to work in tandem with the private and public sector to tackle a lot of these issues around systemic inequalities and a lot of what's been brought out and magnified by the pandemic and the, you know, recent events. So we're working with Major League Hacking, and, you know, we feel like we can work with partners and drive change and take action. And that's just, you know, one example of many, and that's just the start.
Yeah, and Joy, for you as well. I mean, I know, we discussed it a little bit and how, you do have this great relationship with your partners. That was already something that had been established pre all of this crisis. But it's not something you can force, when we talk about getting involved, being part of, whether it be COVID or with what is everything that's going on with George Floyd. How did you sort of approach your partners and these advertisers and try to move forward with them?
I mean, I think that the same way brands aren't looking to be tone deaf, we can't be tone deaf either. I think that, for those brands that did take a beat and want to pause or want to have conversations about what we're seeing, we went right back into market with a new wave of research, not asking directly about what's going on with racial injustice, but around what are on top of people's minds right now. Again, what is it that they expect to hear from brands? What don't they want to hear from brands? And because I think that what we are seeing and where we are guiding partners is very much to what Craig was saying. They are sort of not interested in hearing "we're with you" and in a way that is a sea of sameness. It really, they want to understand what they're doing to take action for their customers, for their employees, and for society at large, and for their communities. And so, helping them understand, I think one of the things that social has always provided a lot of brands is the in the moment action or voice. It is a lot less cumbersome than what it takes to create a digital advertisement or a TV ad. And so it always seems to be most relevant and most in the moment, and most likely and hopefully what consumers are looking to better understand. So we've developed ways to help them more quickly mobilize their social messaging into different forms of creative. And again, I think we've definitely not seen as drastic of a drop as what I think a lot of the industry has seen. And we really take that to mean that what we are doing to remain that steadfast partner, and be flexible, be agile, and help them make these decisions and guide them through the really difficult conversations that are happening at a societal level, to our responsibility.
Right. And when you talk about how you need to do it quickly, and how are you able to make them let your advertisers know that this is really what's going on? How are you able to give them that input so they can trust to move forward rather than, going dark, as maybe that's the initial impulse?
I mean, I think we proactively communicate. We don't wait. We're trying not to wait for people to come to us proactively and cancel. I think, the moment things are happening, we are really proactively letting them know we have new research in the field. Here's what we're seeing from a reader pattern standpoint. Here's where we're seeing, what Jessica was saying and what Craig was saying, here's all the way back to when COVID began. Here's the breaking news phase. Here's the analysis phase. Here's the service journalism phase that people are trying to better understand, and ultimately how that impacts their own marketing efforts. We've also begun a series of masterclasses for our clients that essentially take multiple thought leaders or experts across the Washington Post, not just even in our advertising department, to help them understand what it's like to do investigative journalism in the age of a pandemic, to understand what data and the conversation that we all seem to have stopped having for the moment, but is still looming in the background, means, what storytelling in the age of crisis looks like. And so we've really, those have been happening multiple times per week. We've had a really incredible sort of turnout, so much to the fact that we know this is something that will continue beyond the crisis.
Yeah, and Craig, I mean, I think that that's something, to both Jessica and Joyce, they came up with different things that they found value in, and that it's something not only could help them through this time, but as they move forward. Is there anything that's coming that's you guys have sort of figured out to say, all right, this is a great way for us to, talk with our advertisers and help them through these kind of crises?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I look on the virtual event front, and I think that, being on one right now, I feel like this is like a natural kind of like evolution for us, because in some ways, I like live events, comes with so much lead time. You have to book a venue, you have to sometimes, you know, sell tickets, or it's such a production. And not that virtual events like don't have their own kind of like complications or like levels of production, but in some ways we've looked at virtual events as kind of like live branded content moments that at times we thought were only available to, you know, Facebook Live or like different platforms that like we could like have live tune in on. But I think that's been like a really interesting moment, is how do you create these real-time live experiences that again traditionally have like kind of like sat in the TV vacuum, but bring them actually to consumers in the moment. And then how do you organically work with brands to kind of integrate those moments? And I think when you think about things that we've done, like we did, you know, Teen Vogue has probably been the biggest brand that we've focused on in regards to building these virtual events. So we had a Teen Vogue prom and Teen Vogue commencement over the last, you know, 6 weeks or what have you, that have been really incredible experiences, and also really, you know, smart business models for us on the commercial side. But it's kind of like taking the best of all worlds, right? It's like all of us are in this unique moment in which we're all experiencing the same thing at the same time. And it creates voids or gaps in the natural experience of people's lives, right? Like you're used to, you know, high school, like going to the prom is like a natural moment for a lot of people, right? Commencement is like this big moment for a lot of people. And in some ways it's getting stripped away from them based off of like what we're all going through. So how can our brands, our editorial voices, our creative minds, you know, use our platforms to help, I don't know, kind of like, you know, bring people together for those moments so that they feel like they just didn't completely like lose it, or they were just like, you know, kind of graduated on the wrong year or went to high school during the wrong time. How can we kind of organically bring them those experiences, and then, you know, work with our advertising partners to make it feel very natural and organic, and to give them moments within those experiences?
Well, and that's a great point. And for you guys as well, what is that you're finding now that you really learned to, it kind of surprised you that you were able to offer this to people and make them feel better or help them get through this time? And what I would say the number one thing that you learned, say Jessica, that you feel made things not quite so bad, we're able to move forward a little bit and help people sort of get through all of this?
It's probably the human element of all being in this together. And at the end of the day, it's a relationship business and it's a people business. And as much as we talk about data in our industry, the data is informed by what people are doing and reading and going, and just, I guess, connecting with people on such a human element and such a human way. And being in our homes and remote environments has made everything just that much more personal. And I think that we'll come away from that feeling closer together. And this has been a sort of a global event and a global movement that we're seeing now, which gives us hope and confidence that we can continue to work together and partner together. And I guess, you know, for me, here we are virtually, but as Craig said, like, we've learned a lot along the way that we can actually bring more people to our events virtually, even if it's going forward a combination of live physical plus virtual, where we can give access to content and information on a wider way, and same with speakers and sponsors. So I guess that's something really interesting.
And well, and for Joy, it's more in terms of your organization. Again, it's the type of thing where you guys rallied pretty quickly. What is it about your organization? You know, you talked about that you had already had these developing partnerships, but also from within the company. Because this is an unprecedented time, but hopefully we won't see it again. But obviously this is now sort of opened all of our eyes that we need to be prepared for things. What is it that you credit with your company?
You know, I think that agility is the thing that people will learn that they need to adopt if they don't already have it within their companies. But I think I'd speak maybe even for all of the panelists here today. We've been disrupted, maybe absolutely not to this extent over the course of the past 5, 6, 10 years, but we've gone through constant disruption and constant need to reinvent, constant need to be agile. And I think that what this did was take that from perhaps what may sometimes feel like it's only impacting the more executive level to try to think about what is your business going to look like next year. This literally took the fact, like everybody to really imagine what our business will look like, because everyone's been disrupted. And I think that the incredible thing is that the sense of purpose that I saw come from our entire organization, especially in the first 6 weeks, it was, what do you need me to do? I will do whatever we need to do to continue moving this forward. And I think people really taking pride in contributing to how we address this. And what I think it's done for us both inside the company and I think as an industry, and I want to go back to something Jessica said, this is a relationships industry, but I think that this crisis has changed what relationship means. And it doesn't mean whether or not we get together to go to a game or whether we get to go together to go out to lunch. It actually means the intrinsic value that we can provide to one another. It means getting together, not to just get on a Zoom to say, hey, so what can you tell me about your business? What are your priorities? It's, I have something that we've been noticing that we believe is of real value to you as you navigate this. And the appreciation that the other side of the screen, I guess, feels in that is far beyond any like lunch I've ever taken anybody out for. I think that this is something that feels, relationships are redefined in a way I think that we have needed to happen for a long time. And I'm really excited by the value that it ultimately can bring to the industry at large.
Well, and yeah, I mean, you guys basically, as I said early on, all of a sudden you're getting just this uptick in traffic, it's surging, yet you have less staff or staff is at home and everything's in disruption. So, I mean, I guess, Craig, just to you for this one, how have you been managing, and do you see that kind of staying the same? I mean, obviously that's been a huge impact for you guys, and are you going to continue that, or what do you see for the future that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what we have done as a result of that is really think about prioritizing certain opportunities in a more centralized way. And so like what I mean by that is, we've been evolving as a company for a while on the commercial side. We were a brand-based organization for a long time, and probably, 18 months ago, moved into more of a centralized category-based sales organization. That's still leading with our brands, but, everyone kind of like, running accounts, selling across the entire portfolio. Right. And so, as you're kind of like evolving, you still have this, natural kind of like, tendency, I think, to like put a lot of ideas out. Right. Because like when I was, like running different brands at the company, it's like you were only selling those brands. And so like you were thinking about a lot of different ideas tied to those specific brands. And I think now in our current structure combined with the current reality that you just talked about, I think for us, it's more about having whatever those 5 or 10 ideas, like a Teen Vogue commencement or a Teen Vogue prom, and rallying the entire commercial organization around those ideas and those platforms. And again, like getting everyone excited about them and making sure everyone's kind of marching to the same drum against those ideas versus, everyone, like each category kind of like having like 2 or 3 ideas that they're taking out, prioritizing on their own, and having like 25 across the organization, because it would just be too complicated with the pandemic, I think, and virtual working to have too many things out in the market that you're trying to sell against.
Right.
Simplification is the key.
Yes. Well, I just have one more question for you, but I want to just remind everyone, if you have a question for our panelists, just feel free to raise your little hand at the bottom of the screen. But and I want to put this out to all of you guys, and we'll just go, each one of you. What's that silver lining? I know each of you sort of talked about different things with me earlier about things that, you really discovered that you may not have, and it's got something you're going to move forward with. Jessica, tell me about what that is for you.
It's funny that you mentioned silver linings, because I oversee a CRO of Forbes, the revenue team, and I actually asked everyone to submit a hashtag silver lining or their silver linings through this, and collected hundreds of them. Our CEO actually sent it around to the entire company. So everyone's submitting their own silver linings. We've gotten multiple from several individuals, and I hope to all be back at our offices in HQ and go through them. So it's really personal, and part of it is business. I think some of the silver linings, at least for me, have been, something that we talked about in terms of moving fast, being super innovative, the acceleration of the change in our business, as Joy said, disruption, and being able to work remote and work from home, and to show that we can do whatever's needed to move our business forward. And then a silver lining for me personally is spending more time with my 2 adult children, 19 and 21, who probably wouldn't want to be hanging out with their mom a lot, but that's been actually something that has been fun, especially for somebody who's worked their entire careers and has missed a lot of time with their children. It's been nice to kind of reclaim that.
That's great. And Joy, you mentioned in terms of live TV, live video. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think, Craig was talking about this a bit, and Jessica touched on it too, but I think we've always thought about live programming as an in-person event. And what we've learned is we've been doing live programming at least once a day, if not twice, and it's drawing in audiences of cable news ratings. So, for our latest series, Race in America, we're doing 1 million live views. And it is incredible to see that this is a new part of our business that, again, will go on beyond this. And I think it's part of what we've all begun to think of is what is our business? I think we always think about planning and the 5-year plan, and it always feels, always in the ether, but this is tangible. What is our new business look like in the next 6 to 12 months? And so clearly has arisen this approach to live programming that I think we're all really excited about. So I think reinvention and resilience have been something that we've learned over time, but have never had to demonstrate more. And I think people are proud of that.
That's great. And how about for you, Craig?
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of echo what I said before too, in terms of like, I think, a big difference between, what we're trying to kind of like operate through, maybe compared to Joy and Jessica, are like they represent kind of like, these single brands, right? And like Condé Nast, for the most part, because we went to market and we were structured in a way that we really kind of represented, Vogue or the New Yorker, and didn't really have a big focus around like what Condé Nast represented, right? And so I think for us, being a one centralized organization over the last 18 months, everyone still, it was bringing together people that had historically been fragmented, right? And so when you do that, there's always natural kind of like, well, this is how I did it. Well, this is how we did it. And like, how do we do it now together? And I think the pandemic and kind of like, being remote and us all being in the same situation in terms of like the marketplace has just created like an impetus where it's not like, I feel like people are naturally coming together more and understanding each other's point of views better, and willing to kind of collaborate and share credit in a way that, sometimes in sales organizations, when it's fragmented and you bring it together, everyone's kind of like type A, everyone's competitive. And so I think, just naturally kind of like bringing your guard down a little bit and being more collaborative as we're continuing to evolve has been a big silver lining for us over the last couple of years.
It definitely takes a pandemic to reinforce things for you guys, so I'm sure. Well, now let's just open it up. Steve, do we have any questions for these guys?
We do, and I think I recognize Scott Bender from Prohaska. Scott, go ahead and ask your question.
Great, thank you, and appreciate the panel. You guys have touched on this, but just, and this is kind of a broad, open-ended question, but, what changes from all this in terms of your respective sales organizations, moving forward once we get past this period? Obviously, everyone's working on a remote basis, but in terms of how you're thinking about your organizations, how they're organized, whether it's skill sets, makeup, and certainly even things like go-to-market, whether it's balancing direct versus programmatic efforts. Thank you.
Sure. I think that what we see is it can't be a or, it's got to be an and, right? I think that we've seen our business, without a doubt, our partnership business has chrome-plated a lot of why we've seen a lot less drop-off in terms of any deterioration of business year over year, but our more transactional and programmatic business has served as an extremely strong foundation at the same time. And I think taking your eye off either one of them is something that we can't let ourselves do. I think it requires, though, determining where to focus efforts and talent and time. And so I think that's really put a fine point on it for us.
Anyone else have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I would say to that point too, it's that, our organization has always been a heavy, whether it's programmatic guaranteed or direct sales, I kind of look at those things as one and the same. We've always been a heavy direct investment company, right? And I think with the pandemic, it's like, it doesn't matter how strong your relationships are or how good your sellers are, like you're seeing increased supply and decreased demand. It's like gravity. And so I think that, the things that we're working on, a lot of like operational housekeeping items, right? Like you're really thinking about like, viewability and fraud. We just finished rolling out pre-bid across all of our sites to make sure that we're optimizing demand sources and not being over reliant on Google from an SSP standpoint. So there's all these things that I think sometimes as a very heavy direct sales organization that maybe we didn't prioritize because it didn't have the biggest revenue impact. Well, now it's like you have to look in the mirror, have to look at those things and kind of handle and deal those things. So that would be my answer on that.
Okay, well,